Now, I don't have guests on the Legal Paige podcast very often, but when I do, you know it's going to be a good one. I am welcoming my good friend, Hope Taylor with Hope Taylor Photography, who is a senior photographer based in Georgia and South Carolina. She not only has a thriving senior photography business, but she educates thousands of other photographers across the entire United States on how to build a successful senior photography business and run spokesmodel senior rep teams. Fun little tidbit here. Back in the day, when I was a senior photographer in my hometown, we're talking here like 8-10 years ago, I learned from Hope on how to build my senior photography business. And I even had a spokesmodel team. So I took her course. We are going full circle today in this episode. We're not only talking about how we met and a lot of her amazing business education tips, but we're going to deep dive into the legalities of senior photography contracts and spokesmodel teams and what we would suggest that you do to ensure that your business is legally protected. This is such a good conversation, so let's just get into it. Hey there, I'm Paige Griffith, your host and an attorney for small business owners. I help online businesses and creatives get legally legit in no time. This podcast is all about the legal and the Paige behind it. I'll break down and simplify legal talk while providing practical business guidance every step of the way. And after over a decade in the entrepreneur space and becoming a mother, I'll also be sprinkling in tips for running a business and giving you a glimpse behind the scenes of what life's really like. As a gentle reminder and disclaimer, I am an attorney, but I am not your attorney. So be sure to seek legal counsel for personalized advice. Welcome to the Legal Paige Podcast. Hope, hi, welcome to the Legal Paige Podcast.
Hi, Paige. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about this.
Me too. I can't remember how we met. Do you recall?
No. Okay. So I was trying to think about this. I know the first time we met in person was at United at that conference in Arizona, but I think that we were online friends before that maybe. And then that was just our first official, like, oh my gosh, nice to finally meet you in real life.
I think so. Yeah, that's how the virtual world, online world works, huh? Is we all follow each other and then we're like, this is a cool educator and company and maybe we can do something together. And I just loved what you have done. Actually, I'm going to go back in time here. I seriously think I bought your spokesmodel course back in the day. And
I think you're right.
I think I am, because I was like, wait a second. I started, I was a photographer back in the day, now a retired photographer, but I had a pretty big senior photography business, and that's much due to you and your education. So thank you.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm honored for you to even say that. But now that you say that, I'm remembering that I had your headshot on the sales page for a long time. One of your testimonials was on the sales page for a long time. Now that you say that, that is so funny. What year would that have been? Would that have been like 2016?
Yeah. The first year you launched it, I think I was in your inaugural class. What is life right now?
That was a baby version of the class that it is now. That is so funny. Oh my goodness. We were talking about how fast time flies before we started recording. Talk about time flying.
We did. Now we're moms. Now we kind of have, our businesses have gone in somewhat different directions, mine in a very different direction, but that's so cool. Yeah. United was a blast. RIP United, I miss you so much, but it was a really good time while it lasted. But Showit has an amazing conference called Spark now. So, okay, tell everyone listening in kind of who you are. I know who you are. We have a longstanding virtual and in-person relationship. But yeah, kind of your business trajectory since back in the day that we were just talking about.
Oh, yeah. We'll throw it all the way back. I'll give you guys the Spark Notes version. So I actually started my photography business when I was a junior in high school. So that would have been in 2012. And I was 15 years old. So didn't even have a driver's license. And I started photographing my peers for fun and just kind of taking pictures on the side. And ultimately, it ended up that when I graduated high school, my business in that 2 years had grown from photographing friends for fun to what was really a full-time income at the time, which is is bananas to think about. But I was shooting like every single day, kind of trying to prove to everybody like, hey, this doesn't have to just be a side hobby. So when I graduated high school, I went full time with my business instead of going to college. And now I've been 11 years full time, which is just bizarre. I mean, talk about time. Oh, thank you. Little claps. It's crazy to look back at that journey. So basically I evolved from just photographing everything because I wanted to, and I wanted to learn and kind of like get the ropes and figure out what it was that I wanted to shoot. I niched down to seniors. And then for a period of time, I added in weddings, but I've recently removed weddings and I'm just honing in on senior photography, which is just my love. I think it's because I started when I was that age. So I just was naturally photographing my peers from the very beginning. And it's just kind of stuck as the thing that I just really, really love. But in that kind of journey over the last 11 years, I've evolved into educating other photographers on this niche because it is so niche. It's something that's so specific. If you photograph weddings, you can't necessarily take that and photograph seniors because posing's different, marketing's different. It's just all so different. And I love teaching other photographers how to make seniors feel beautiful, but also build a profitable business as a result. So that's actually the majority of what I do now. I do probably 20% shooting, 80% educating thousands of photographers across the globe in courses, coaching, a membership, all the things. And I absolutely love it.
You're seriously so talented at it. And again, I'm going back to, I just have flashbacks right now, really good flashbacks of, I did the same thing. Like I did a lot of weddings and a lot of wedding photography, but senior and family photography too. I'm in Western Montana. So I felt like you kind of have to do everything to like make a go of it as a full-time photographer. Sure. But my true love was senior photography, just like you. It's fun to talk with another senior photographer because one, it's hard to completely niche down in that. That's amazing that you have. And two, I really got a ton of joy from making them feel like their best self and giving their families something to remember, but them something to remember, like who they were in that year, what their true loves were. And honestly, I thought it was easier than photographing like many people in a session. I mean, let's just be honest, photographing one person. And even if they're like a little bit awkward and shy or just like not totally themselves, having like 1 to 2 hours with them and then coming out of it and them just feeling amazing, like who they truly were as a person and amazing, and getting them out of their shells was so much fun. So yeah, I last summer actually came out of my retirement phase for a brief period of time. You know, like now I just do it for fun and as a true hobby on the side. And someone that was very near and dear to me was a senior graduating. And so it was fun kind of before he went into his senior year, we did some photos up at the lake where his cabin was. And it was so fun. It was so fun.
I love that. It's so fun. And I love that you kind of get to reclaim photography as just a passion and like a thing that you do on your own terms. That's incredible. And one of my favorite things about seniors too is you get to have a little more creative control. Like you're not showing up at someone else's wedding and they dictate what everything looks like. Like you get to be a little bit more in charge, and it just feels a little bit more creative in that sense, a little bit more artistic on that side of things. And I get to use my creative brain, which is just so much fun. So I'm so glad that you still love seniors too. That makes me happy.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I do think you get to flex the creative side of your, photography, the like business, like why you became a photographer to begin with a little bit more. Okay, let's go back to when you first started your business in high school. I am fully guilty of this, not having a contract when I first started. I think a lot of us are, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I always like to talk to people who have been in the industry a long time and now you're an educator, like back in the day when you were first starting, family and friends. Okay, think back to that period of time. Did you have a contract in place? And if not, kind of when did you feel like it was the right time to get a contract in place?
Okay, I love this question because I for sure did not have my life together back then. I was 15 and I barely knew anything. So I actually vividly remember this because since I was so young, I had a really hard time getting like a bank account set up or getting permission to use like PayPal. There were times back then where they wouldn't let me make my own account. I had to do it under my dad's name. It was a whole thing. And so I did not have a contract in place because I was just like, how do I even get paid when these banks don't even view me as is a legal human. And so I had to do lots of like jumping through hoops. And what I did back then, I vividly remember, is I would do PayPal invoices and I would type what I considered a contract in the terms and conditions section of the PayPal invoice.
Better than nothing.
So I mean, it kind of worked, but what I mean by like my terms and conditions was, I'm pretty sure 2 sentences about like, this payment is to book a session. Thanks, bye. Like that is the extent of my legal protection in the first couple years. I think that right around the time I decided to go full time instead of go to college was when I was like, okay, we should probably like make this legally legit. And I did start using contracts consistently and obviously have since then. So, but it's funny looking back at that because I was like, I'm taking an extra step by including these terms and conditions. I'm so on top of things. And now I'm like, oh my goodness, I am so grateful nothing terrible happened because it would have been a mess. It would have been a mess.
Yeah. I mean, everyone is very, very similar in that respect. I think we all start our creative businesses, even if you're not a photographer, and you're just like, I need to get some clients on board. I need to bring some income coming in. I need to figure out how I'm going to pay for my website design and my social media marketing and like a little bit of overhead that I have. And then I can think about contracts. And you know that I'm a huge proponent of get contracts in place first and then figure out all the rest later. But like you mentioned, a lot of times it has to do with, I'm really glad that nothing happened. And if something were to have happened, it would have been an eye-opening experience for you. So this is a good transition into my next question, which is, what are some big learning lessons that you've had in your, photography, senior photography career or wedding photography? I know you did a little bit of those, like big learning lessons, or sometimes people feel like it's more of an external, like outside factor where they hear about a bunch of things from the industry and they're like, okay, now I need to get protected and get my contract into place.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of this was around setting boundaries in my business because I was young. And so there were some people that took advantage of that and would kind of try to step all over me and cross boundaries that I had tried to set, but were nowhere legally bound. And so this was a huge boundary setting conversation for me because I just knew that I needed to help people to understand where they could and couldn't push me around. And they really couldn't push me around at all once I actually implemented a contract. But at the time, it was 4 big things that come to my mind that I really needed to set boundaries around. One was communication, setting expectations for when they could expect to hear from me and what avenues or platforms they could expect to hear back from me. Because back then I was giving my cell phone number to everybody and it was the worst idea ever. And so I wanted to set clear boundaries around, we will be communicating over email, and this is when you can expect a response during these hours, and here's how long I can take to do that. That was a huge one. Another big one was about payments, which I think is such a standard one a lot of us have struggled with, but when retainer payments are due, how much it is, and what happens if your payments are late. Just a clear payment schedule and clear principles around a late payment. Whether you do or do not actually enforce that is up to you, but just having a clear strategy of like, hey, if for this many days late, you owe me this much more, just really sets that expectation and that boundary up front. And then the last 2 were gallery delivery times. I know all of us photographers are like praise hand emojis of people blowing up our phones being like, hey, is my gallery done? Is my gallery done? And it's been 48 hours. And so setting expectations of when they can expect to get that back. I do over deliver on that. So they get their gallery back sooner than the contract states, but it just protects me in case something terrible were to happen. And then I think this is probably something a lot of photographers experience, but the 4th thing for me was having clients arrive really late. I have a specific shoot I'll never forget. And I think our meeting time was like 5 p.m. and it was 6:15 and the girl pulls up. It's almost dark outside because it was the fall and she still hadn't straightened her hair. Her location was at a barn and she needed an outlet to plug her hair straightener in to straighten her hair. And I was like, girl, it's dark outside and we are at a farm. Like, what is happening? And so that was a moment where I was like, okay, we're going to set a clear boundary around being late to your session. And after a certain amount of time, you forfeited it for the day and we have to reschedule. So those were the 4 big ones for me: communication, payments, late arrivals, and gallery delivery.
Yeah, I'm putting it into a real world perspective of why those are in there. Those are in all legal Paige photography contracts, but it's really interesting behind the okay, this happened in my photography journey and I don't want that to happen again. And here's this instance that I remember, and this is why that is in there. I'm sure you do some follow-ups too after you send your contract and they've officially booked you and you're just reinforcing certain clauses that are in your contract. Now I'm guessing you have a contract in place for every single session that you shoot. Can you talk about that process a little bit and how you make it really seamless for clients? Because I think everyone does it a little bit differently, and it's nice for people to hear kind of what is your back end kind of workflow.
Absolutely. And I use obviously your contracts. And so I have the senior one and the spokesmodel one. I love them both. So I purchased those, personalized them, and I use HoneyBook right now to send my contracts. So once a client inquires and decides they're ready to book, I send them a proposal in HoneyBook, which includes their payment schedule and their contract in one place. They make that retainer payment. Their session isn't booked until they do, and they have to return that with the signed contract in order for the date to be officially booked. I actually do have them initial a couple important clauses, like some of the ones I just mentioned, just so I know that they've read them and that they've seen them. And I have both the parent and the senior sign the contract. That way I know that I'm protected from both angles and that they've both, in theory, they've both seen the contract and read over what those clauses state. After they've done that, I send them what I call my senior style guide. And it's a 60+ page virtual magazine, and it talks them through everything they need to know about their shoot. But to what you just said, it reiterates all of those important clauses. This is how many outfits you can bring. This is why you only can have that many, because logistically the timing looks like this. And this is what happens if you're late, because I can't make the sun stay out later. And just kind of reiterating all of those clauses and all of those important things in the contract so that they have seen them in multiple places. One is the, stiffer, quote unquote, legal version. And then the other one's the more fun, like, hey, I can't make the sun stay out late, so let's plan your outfits and do it in a fun way together. And that way it's just been reiterated and shown to them multiple times what they can expect the entire experience to look like.
Yeah. And then like right before a session, I'm guessing you kind of send something similar. Is it just an email? Is it another PDF? Because I used to get into situations where I would do the same thing. I think you taught me how to do this, so this is not a surprise that I did something very similar to you. You guys can all tell who my photography educators were back in the day. Goodness. I felt like, okay, they had seen that. They were really excited, right? They already paid their retainer. They booked. Boom, you over-deliver and you send them like a huge welcome packet of some respect. Maybe it's tangible. Maybe it's virtual now. Then, 2 weeks out and then maybe like a day or two out. I just feel like seniors in particular they're just not all, they don't have everything in one place.
Yeah.
And they're
you're right.
Sometimes forgetful. And we can get into this in a little bit, like parents and how involved parents are in the process really, really differs per session. So what do you do kind of beforehand? Maybe you could give some tips and tricks to people. I mean, it kind of has to do with the contract, but it also has to do with just workflow and how to better your senior photography business.
Absolutely. So I send an email 2 weeks prior so along with that senior style guide I mentioned, I also send them a questionnaire, and that questionnaire, in addition to the style guide, reiterates some of the clauses, and they actually have to check some boxes to agree to things again, just so I know the senior themselves is seeing it and filling it out, because this questionnaire is for the senior themselves to fill out and tell me about their location preferences, their style, what they're looking for, that type of thing. And I have them check boxes of, I understand that it's okay for Hope to post my sneak peeks online. And if their session's being filmed for an educational resource, they check that box again, and those types of things. So that, again, reiterates, it just helps us to be sure we're on the same page. So once they send me that questionnaire back, I use that questionnaire to send them a follow-up 2 weeks before their session. Hey, here's when we're going to meet. Here's my cell phone number if you need me. That's the only time I give someone my cell phone number. If you need me leading up to the session, here it is. You can send me photos of your outfits if you'd like to. That helps me to refine the number of outfits if they have way too many. And then we kind of touch base again about everything and what the plan is. Then the day of the session, I actually text them in case they haven't used my phone number yet, so they know where to reach me. And I ask them again, hey, if you want to send me your outfits, you can ahead of time. That's a big thing in senior photography, is I'll tell them to have 3 to 5 outfits and they'll show up with 9. And I'm like, oh, sister, can't do that. And so I try to reiterate that multiple times and open the door to that conversation with them. But I do text them the morning of their session just so we can stay in communication if they have questions or if they're running late or they need me for anything the day of.
Yeah. Okay, love all of that. It makes total sense because I feel like you have to tell them things multiple times, kind of like teacher status. Like you tell them once, you tell them again, and then you tell them one more time to hopefully have it ingrained in their brain. Okay, I want to go back to like parents and seniors signing, and then I have lots of questions about senior photography contracts and like things that have come up for you. It's fascinating to me because I'm going back in time, but I'm also like, this is a contract that we have looked at time and time and time again here at the Legal Page. We've made, slight changes to it just based on the industry. And obviously things have changed since, 2016, I think is when we created this. So, all right, say you have a minor. So a lot of times seniors in high school are either not quite to 18 or maybe they're just becoming 18. You have both the parent and the senior sign no matter what, correct?
So the only time I don't have the parent sign is if it's a college grad, because I do occasionally photograph college grads too. Yep. That's not nearly as often for me, but I confirm if they are over 18 or not. And then if they are, I don't put the parent on there. But this is almost not new. It's probably something I've been doing for 2 or 3 years now. But for a while, whoever it was that inquired with me that I was talking to, whether that was the senior or the parent, that was the only person I added to the actual Honeybook workspace. I put a place for the parent and the senior to sign. But if we're, being honest, a lot of the time I think the senior just signed for their parent by clicking on it. And I wanted to be sure both of those people were physically seeing the contract. So now, no matter who I'm in comms with, I actually get the parent's email address and the senior's email address and be sure they give me both. Because I found some parents will just skip the idea of their senior getting in there, but then they can't fill out the questionnaire themselves, which is what I want them to do. And then seniors will just not really tell their parents and they'll sign the contract on their behalf. And I don't want that either. So I actually take the time to send an extra email once somebody decides they're ready to book, instead of just immediately sending the contract, which strategically would be ideal, right? Then they can immediately sign and pay. I wait for one more email response with everybody's contact information so I can add them both to the same place. So there is a place for the minor and for the parent to sign. And I know that both of them are physically in the same workspace too.
Love it. And my other tip for people here too is even if you know that they're 18, because this will happen with senior photography, is they'll be like, I'm over 18, I can sign the contract. They are like newly of age of majority to be able to sign contracts. I'm just going to put that out there. And I would venture a guess that their parents or legal guardians or somebody that is an older adult is the one paying for the session, which means they're kind of automatically included as a third party to the contract, even if they don't sign by default, And so I always suggest, even if they're like, hey, I just turned 18 last month, have both people sign, because really, truly, you always have 3 parties to the contract. You as the photographer, the senior who's going to be in the imagery, and they need to be signing kind of off on the model releases, even if they're over 18. And then if they're not over 18, the parent or legal guardian needs to be signing off on those model releases and distribution of images and those types of things. One thing that has come up for me, and I don't know if it's come up for you, is having a parent present or legal guardian present at the session. I'm gonna let you go with this, and then I'm gonna give a story that I have deeply seated in what I've heard in the past. But yeah, what is kind of your policy on that? Do you suggest it for all senior photographers? Can they kind of do what they want there?
Yeah, so I've always kind of let senior photographers do what they want, but I prefer for a parent to be present. A lot of photographers actually prefer parents not be present because they feel like it infringes on the session and the senior isn't themselves in front of the camera with the parent present. I have had that happen. I have ways I kind of offset that and navigate that in real life if it does occur. But I would say 95% of the time the parents come. I'll have like one-off senior that just shows up by herself and like it is what it is. But I prefer to have a parent present just because it gives me someone else to build a relationship with from a marketing perspective, to be honest with you. And it also just gives me the opportunity to, more often than not, I find that the moms of my clients make them feel more comfortable and they're helpful. Like, hey, I know you're not going to like your hair like that. Let me adjust it really quick. Or, hey, you're not going to love those shoes. Like, let's change them. And moms know best. They really do. And so as long as it's a positive experience, I think it's great to have the parent there. I have had a handful of experiences where mom is like a third photographer over my shoulder, or mom is not saying the most positive and encouraging things while she's getting photos taken. And that's always really hurtful to see and hear. And so in those situations, I kind of have like a, like a tool belt in my pocket that I pull out to like distract mom. And I'll be like, hey, actually, could you take some behind the scenes on my phone for me? Or, hey, could you go grab this thing I left in the car? Or actually, I'll even, if the senior goes to change her outfit and I could just tell that mom and senior are not getting along for whatever reason, I will just be really honest with the mom in a really kind, like, hey, I just want to do my job better for you type of way, and say, hey, she seems like she's a little uncomfortable and shy. I've actually experienced this a lot. Would you mind if you would just sit in the car for just this one outfit and let me see if I can't get her to come out of her shell a little bit? I think you'll really love the photos as a result. And so there's ways that you can navigate that in person, but moral of the story is I prefer to have a parent present if I can help it.
Genius. Oh my gosh, I'm nodding so hard right now on things that have gone down for you. Yeah, I feel like when I was shooting, same. Like there was maybe a couple seniors that would show up by themselves, but more often than not, they always have a parent present. Usually it's the mom or like an aunt or somebody that maybe has a little bit more experience. Maybe they've had other, cousins or something do senior photos and like they're the person that they're working with. I feel like they're mainly helpful. Yeah. And there's some instances you gave some true nuggets of gold there on how to navigate like stickier parent situations. But I do the same thing. Like I have them do behind the scenes. I'll have them hold and I am guiding it. And again, it's all about control as the photographer and making sure that you're truly in control and the parent isn't in control. And you can figure that out right away. Like, do they think they're going to be the lead here? And then boom, you just nip that in the bud right away. Okay, so one situation that I had that I now legally tell people I think it is really, really important. Again, you can do what you want as a photographer, but I am here as your like lawyer big sister to tell you this is probably the best way to go about it so that you're fully protected. Right. And this is just based on personal experience. I had a senior who showed up by themselves. I knew they were under 18 because of the, signing situation at the beginning. I always asked people and got clarification on how old they were and then always had the parent sign. They showed up. And I'm sure I didn't do as good a job as you did with like figuring out what exact like outfits they were wearing. And I wasn't as streamlined in my process, but they came with some more revealing outfits.
Yeah.
And it immediately made me uncomfortable. It was a female, so it was okay. For me personally, I felt like I could do this. It was more just like I could tell throughout the session that they wanted to do something and have photos that maybe weren't my style of photography or something I was comfortable with. And there wasn't a parent present. And after that situation, I was like, you know what? If they want that and that's truly what they want in their photos. And I still did like my money shots that were really important. But in the back of my mind, I had to be like, okay, I have to be very, very careful. One, who I send this gallery to. I am only going to send it to the parent first and foremost. Yep. I'm not even going to send it to the senior's email because they signed the contract and now they're not here. And I need them to see like what the senior wanted. And it wasn't my place to say anything. But yeah, it was just it was a weird situation that then when you get those feelings and like a heightened sense of, oh, am I protected from this? Is the contract going to be okay with this? I realized like I needed a parent present for those types of situations. But again, I'm a very type A individual. Like I have a lot of control. I have a lot of good like demeanor at sessions. I can handle it. But I was just thinking, if it was someone else in this situation, it could get sticky pretty fast. Same thing goes for people who come to sessions. I have a question for you on that. How do you go about model releases for, say, siblings that show up at the session and want a couple photos, or oftentimes best friends that show up that aren't even under, the parents', responsibility per se?
Sure. That's a great question. So honestly, I haven't had this come up in a really long time. The only example I could think of would be family members, but typically it's mom that just jumps in a couple of photos. And so like she kind of knows what she signed. The only time I can think of is recently I had somebody bring their boyfriend, which I actually think is a great conversation aligning with what you're talking about, the senior being more revealing. If a senior shows up with her boyfriend and wants like really cutesy pictures with her boyfriend, but the mom doesn't even know the boyfriend came, that can also create a whole situation.
Oh,
yeah. And you want to photograph them very modestly, like they're friends and not like an engagement session. Anyways, but so in those situations, I honestly gravitate towards just steering clear of sharing those images online. I don't have a separate model release that I have them sign. If I was going to do a lot of sharing of those photos, I would have both parties sign a model release. But I haven't had that come up in a long time. In the past, I haven't had them sign a separate model release. I've kind of acted under the assumption that they knew what they were signing up for with the contract that was already signed. But now that we're filming sessions and using them more frequently for education, I would have them sign a separate model release before sharing anything online.
Yeah. And you guys, for everyone listening, that's just a really simple kind of 1-pager, 1.5, 2-pager document that it doesn't even look like that when you're sending online, right? It's just a scroll and sign. But it's a model release form. And sometimes those situations you have to get more people involved. So you have to get the boyfriend or the partner's like parent to sign on behalf. But like Hope said, you're totally good to go if you're just delivering these images to the people and that sign the contract, so the senior and their parent, and you're steering clear of posting those anywhere online. But the minute that you do that, we've just had some situations that have popped up in the TLP community from senior photographers, and they've had this occur where then they posted these photos and then the people are no longer dating. And now they want all of those taken offline. And unless you kind of have a model release in place, you just have to like do what they say. Have you, in that same vein, have you encountered recently, I think this is more of a recent thing, I would say post, I don't know, just digital era becoming such a digital era, 2018, 2019, 2020, more privacy requests from seniors and parents?
So I actually haven't. I think that because that's such a huge part of my marketing, I do lots of reels and Instagram stories and behind the scenes of the whole senior client experience. I actually think I kind of attract seniors who want that part of the client experience and look forward to that being a part of the experience. But if I get a privacy request, I do honor it. I remove those things from the contract and I will honor it and I won't share those images online. I just take that into consideration with the value of my time, if I'm being super honest, because a huge part of what we do now is filming sessions and doing those behind the scenes and doing that content. And so if it's a session that like requires travel and they don't want me to film it and I can't do any behind the scenes, I'm probably going to charge extra for that. But I actually haven't. I don't know if I've ever gotten that request for a senior client.
Fascinating, honestly, fascinating with it being a minor. But yeah, that makes sense in terms of how you go about marketing. So if people are booking you, they're seeing all of this happening online and the seniors are really jazzed about that, which is probably one of the reasons that they're booking you to shoot their senior photos. So goes hand in hand there. But I will just say to everyone that's tuning in, I do think it's occurring more and more now with minors online. And I think it's going to continue occurring. And so what you just need to have in your back pocket is like a senior photography contract comes with that base model release language, which is an all-inclusive model release, right? Like me as the photographer can use your images for any and all purposes in marketing and advertising and yada, yada. But if the parent isn't comfortable with that or the minor isn't comfortable with that, maybe they're, just recently over 18 as well. If they aren't comfortable with that, and usually it's coming from the parent or legal guardian side, then you just need to switch that model release clause out with a privacy of images clause. And we have multiple options in our a la carte clause. And this is just something a lot of photographers now keep in their back pocket because it's happening with weddings now too, where you can nuance that clause to what your clients are comfortable with and what you would like to do as a photographer who also needs to do some marketing and advertising. Is there a way that you could just use 5 of those images that they agree to in your marketing and advertising? So you can put that in the clause so that it's not an all or nothing type of situation. Right. Electronic devices at sessions too, I think, are something we have to be a little bit careful about as well. Yeah, but what were you going to say?
I was going to say, to this point, now that we film so many sessions, I did want to give the caveat that's like a totally optional part of the experience for my seniors. They get to determine whether or not they're comfortable with that, and it's separate from the model release clause. So if they don't want their session filmed, that's totally fine, and it happens all the time. The thing that doesn't happen all the time is like full-fledged, don't share me online at all, period. The filming portion is optional, but the model release, like not wanting any images shared, complete privacy, that hasn't ever happened, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, it is. Good for you. Power to you that hasn't happened. Watch it happens like next week when you book
I was
someone,
just about
and
to
you're gonna
say,
text me
yeah.
and be like, what happened? What did you put in the air, Paige? I'm sorry. It's going to be okay.
Gosh.
Can you tell people like why you film sessions? Because I don't think we totally got into that. You glossed over it. I know why,
Yes.
but everyone listening might not know why you do
Yeah,
that.
I just realized that people are probably like, why is that? I have a membership where every month members get access to a new session and they get to watch the full shoot behind the scenes and hear my real-time thoughts on like camera settings, lighting, posing, weird interactions with parents, how to pose a boyfriend and their seniors so that they're not inappropriate or looking too romanticized, that type of thing. So we film a lot of sessions so that we can use it for that behind the scenes content and people can learn from like real life shoots. But it's a separate portion of the contract that they can click yes or no basically, and it's completely up to them. But that's what I'm talking about with that.
Okay. Yeah. So for everyone listening, and that's just a senior photographer, and you may not be an educator, like you don't have to film from start to finish your entire sessions. But what Hope does is really, really awesome because you get a behind the scenes glimpse into what shooting seniors is really like and interacting with parents. And, you know, I'm sure I haven't actually seen one of your filming, like your videos on like what happened. But I'm guessing you also like peep and talk to your videographer like, hey, this just happened. And as you're talking to other people who are learning. So you really get some really good insights from Hope in the moment on what's going on.
Oh, you
and you're
do.
like, oh crap, this is happening. This is what I'm going to do. Just, quick tip here. Okay, let's switch gears. We talked a lot about senior photography. I want to talk about spokesmodels. And can you share a little bit about your background on like why you had a spokesmodel program? Do you still have one? Why do you still teach on them? Do you think people still use them in the industry? All the things. Go.
Absolutely. So if somebody doesn't know what a spokesmodel team is at all, I will start there. So spokesmodel team and senior rep team are interchangeable terms. They mean the same thing. Essentially, it's a group of high school seniors that are in your local market. They're seniors at your local high schools that represent your business for the entirety of their senior year. So they're required to do things like market you on social media, participate in group shoots. They use you as their sole photographer for their senior year. Essentially, their job is to be like walking billboards of your photography business throughout the local high schools where you live. In exchange, they get really fun benefits from you as the photographer. They get to do group styled shoots, group events, slumber parties. You can do as much or as little really as you want on this front, but they get to just be a part of this fun community that you get to build as the photographer. So I did spokesmodel teams for 5 years when I had my business back in Virginia, and I have not had a spokesmodel team recently solely because I moved 3 times, got married, had a baby. And I haven't had the need for one, but I really believe that to this day in 2024, spokesmodel teams are an incredible way to build your business and build buzz and build marketing and get integrated into a market that you might otherwise not have access to. I kind of view it like having almost like spies like in the market. Like you're sending these spokesmodel teams out into the world and into the high schools that you don't have access to because I definitely don't at almost 30 years old, but they are doing the hard work of the marketing for you. You just have to build and market this incredible experience for them, and then they do the hard part for you. And I really believe that it is an incredible way to grow your business still to this day.
I have so many things to say about spokesmodel teams. I loved them. So Hope, I took her course back in the day and learned how to create a spokesmodel team. And I agree with you. I think it gave me a lot more clout in my specific region on, she shoots senior photography. And that is a huge niche that she has. Like I went from all-inclusive, like family photographer and pet photographer. And like I would do engagements and couples and like just everything, brand photography. But once I really loved senior photography, I was like, okay, how do I market this better? And I remember this is honestly an old school marketing and advertising practice where they would have reps, like a senior rep team. Spokesmodel teams, like you said, they're interchangeable, but I think those are more of like a big group. So to speak. I think they can just be one-offs. But I remember when I was in high school, the OG, you know what I'm talking about? OG high school photographers, usually dudes, usually males. And they had been doing it for 20, 30 years. They're the ones that were kind of like partnered with John Stones. And all of that. There was always one rep per high school in town. And we had 3 high schools. So there's only 3. And so it was so cool to become that person. And I think I used that as my catalyst to, okay, I could do the same thing now, but as a female photographer that's a little more new age, and I have a very different style than all these more in-studio, senior, old school guy photographers in town. I think they are still around, and they are extremely talented. So I'm not dogging on them. They know what they're doing. But I think there was kind of a niche that wasn't taken in my area. Sure. And we're talking here, oh my gosh, what is this? 2012, 2013, somewhere around there, where outdoorsy, light and bright photography, like I was kind of more of a light and airy photographer. So I created a spokesmodel team, and I think I did it for 2 or 3 years, like you said. And it was at the very, very beginning, and it just really revved up who I was and what I was doing as a photographer in my area. I think I only had, it was really hard to get the spokesmodels on board for the very beginning of that. I think I had like 4 or 5 maybe. And I wanted diversity and all of that, which was a little bit challenging here in Montana. But I was able to do it. And then it grew from there. And I think my biggest spokesmodel team that I had was like, oh God, close to 15. Which was crazy cool. But like you said, I think you can make it more than just taking pretty photos. We did like community service events, and we did different challenges in town. We helped out at local organizations, and I filmed all of that and really used that for marketing and advertising purposes. And then also individual shots with them and group shots with them. And then, they are your walking billboard. So now I'm thinking back and I'm like, oh my gosh, this was the beginning of me doing affiliate programs. I just realized this on this podcast. Yes. You taught me Hope. You were the beginning stages of the TLP affiliate program. No, I'm just joking. But truthfully, I feel like they were the beginning ways of me being like, okay, how can I incentivize them to talk to their friends more? And I did it with a kickback. It was like an affiliate kickback commission. And if they had someone that was a true referral that came and did their senior photos, they would get money back, because what do seniors in high school care about most? Having their own money. And so we would do dollars, and then we would make it a big deal with the whole team that this person had referred this many people this month and they got this payout. It was like wow. Now I think I did this in my photography business and I didn't even know.
It's crazy. It's the same strategy though. It's same strategy. I said it's the same strategy as an affiliate team. I mean, it really is. And it works so well because it serves so many purposes. You were saying you filmed it all and you used it for marketing, and you got the team photos and the individual photos. For a photographer that's trying to break into that niche or start their business, to have a jam-packed portfolio, to have people marketing about you and talking about you in your local community, to have endless content to share on social media to make you appear to be in demand. I mean, there are so many benefits to it. And I think the thing we didn't talk about is that I also charge a fee in order to be a part of the team.
Oh, so tell me more. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're paying the price of a senior session, of a full senior session, and you're getting this long list of benefits. So it's like, it's kind of a shoe-in in terms of marketing, like pay for one session, but get all of this. Like, it's just such an easy thing to market, but you're also getting that income up front. And if they don't do their job of referring seniors, you keep that money. And if they do, then you send some back in terms, in the form of referral bonuses and things like that. But it can also be a cash injection into your business if you need one in the off season, because a lot of times you're doing spokesmodel applications and kind of getting them on the team the winter or the spring of their junior year, which is a dead time typically of shooting because it's cold outside. So you can get a cash injection in that Q1 time of year. There's just so many benefits to it. And I think that the purpose of having a spokesmodel team kind of shifts as your business grows. Like in those first 2 to 3 years of having a team, the purpose of having those senior reps is to grow your business, right? To spread the word about the community. My most recent team, I had 19 girls. I had over 120 applications. It was bananas. What? Because we have 7 public high schools in our county back in Virginia. Okay. And then we also had all the private schools. So it was a massive market. But at that point in my business, I didn't really need to grow anymore. I wasn't trying to scale anymore. I kind of was in a comfortable booking zone. But then it kind of becomes about the community, and it just takes a whole new purpose of doing community service projects and fostering this amazing group of like-minded women and creating friendships and just like watching that all grow throughout the senior year. So it's almost like a passion project that makes you money after a certain point because it doesn't have as much of a need to be the catalyst for growth as it does something that you just enjoy. So I think they're awesome. And I love that you think that too.
I do. I just ran into somebody this weekend at a football game here in town that was my senior rep back in the day, and they like still give me hugs, and like I just have very, very fond memories surrounding that. And honestly, I think the word of mouth would still have been there. The follow-up question for you is, have you had some of them then refer either their siblings or younger friends to you? And then I know you don't do wedding photography as much anymore, but have you photographed some of their weddings?
Yes, I have. So it's actually so funny because one of the girls' weddings, I don't do weddings anymore as of this year. I've actually stopped doing them, but I booked 2. And one of them was a referral from a past client. And another one was a senior of mine that was like a spokesmodel. And I was like, I can't say no to you. Are you kidding me? And so, yes, I mean, that word of mouth still continues. If you create an incredible experience that they can't help but talk about, that is going to continue far past when they're seniors. So yes, I photographed lots of their siblings. I still follow all of my spokesmodels on social media. And in the updated version of the course, actually, and this isn't a pitch, it's just kind of funny, I had past spokesmodels come back and I did interviews with them. Like, what did you like about the team? What didn't you like? Sweet. What motivated you to post more? Like that type of thing. And it's just cool because that was like 4 years removed from being on the team. They were still stoked to come back and be a part of that. And it's just really cool. The relationships you build really are amazing, just for personal reasons and for marketing reasons. It's awesome.
1000% agree. All right, let's go into the legalities surrounding a spokesmodel contract here for a little bit. Back to like TLP stuff. You and I could talk about senior and spokesmodel teams forever, obviously. The contract itself, I think you had a base spokesmodel senior rep contract. This is one of the very first ones that I worked on with kind of a thought leader in the industry like yourself. I think you sent me your contract and we were like, hey, let's get this better to, get this to a better place. Paige, pick through it, poke holes in it. But then you also were like, I always tell people when I'm working with an industry professional, okay, I'm going to review your contract. We're going to partner together. We're going to make this amazing contract that we can, show other people that you've used it as an expert in the industry. I was the lawyer that reviewed it. Can you, one, explain to people kind of that process of working back and forth together? And then the main points is something I always ask people when I'm working on a custom, kind of custom template contract that then we're going to put in the shop.
Sure.
And they're probably going to affiliate for and push out to their audience. A bullet point list, like give me the, 5 to 10 clauses or things that have happened with your spokesmodel team that we have to make sure are in there and clearly legally explained. Maybe people are initialing those types of things. If you could answer both of those, if you remember what I asked, that would be great.
Yes, I do. Okay, yes. The process of making this with you was so much fun because pretty positive back then, I had my senior photography contract that I just used for all my senior sessions. And I added like one clause of like, okay, you're on a team now. And that's what I was using for my spokesmodel team. Like it was not differentiated enough from just a normal session contract. And so we collaborated and I was like, hey, SOS, I know this is not good enough. Like this needs to be more robust. And we worked together on it and I loved it because I was basically like, this is a problem I've run into. This is what they're required to do. How do we communicate that in a contract and make sure it's legal and make sure it's bound to both of us? And it was amazing because you were able to take these like things that I word vomited to you and make them into a contract that it communicates it so well. There are lots of clauses that are unique to a spokesmodel team that I did not have previously that I have now. A few of the big ones that come to mind are what we've already talked about with the parent and minor differences, because with the spokesmodel team, you do interact with the spokesmodels a lot separate from the parents because it kind of creates these friendships amongst the team where all of the parents being there and watching definitely takes away from that vibe, especially when you're doing like events and things like that. Yeah, they're not there. So there needed to be a way to communicate like that these events and things like that are going to happen without parents there and that they're okay with that. So that was a huge part. Another part of it was clearly communicating the requirements of the team. and what they were required to do in terms of a few things, which are all separate clauses. But in terms of posting on social media, we needed them to know when they were expected to post, what they were expected to post, how frequently. And then also in terms of requirements for attending events, this was a big one I ran into a lot. One of the biggest changes I made in my spokesmodel approach was I planned and picked dates for all of the group events and shoots before I ever even put out applications. And that way, when they were applying, they knew, okay, I can't make it to that one shoot. I'm forfeiting that. And I know that before I even apply. Because one of the biggest things when I had 18, 19 girls, I can't even remember how many on the team, was there is no way that you were coordinating a date where 19 girls with sports and extracurriculars and jobs are available. It's not happening. So I picked those ahead of time, and I made sure in the contract they understood not attending an event or a shoot meant that they were forfeiting that experience, and it wasn't going to be made up. That there were exceptions to that for their individual photos, but for the group events, they were forfeiting that experience, and it was not going to be made up. That was a huge part. Another part of the requirements is that I'm required to be their exclusive photographer for their entire senior year. That's a huge one that people will have issues with. Like, hey, my friend has a camera. Can they take pictures of me? However, the caveat to this is if your senior and their family wants to get family photos done for the Christmas card and you don't offer family portraits, I don't think it's fair to tell them that mama can't have a Christmas card that year. Right. So there's exceptions to that rule, and that's outlined in the contract too. Very clearly, the exceptions are family portraits, or I'm trying to think of another exception example that I would give. Prom portraits. Like if I'm not available, but they want professional photos in their prom dress, I'm not going to tell them they can't have photos in their prom dress. So things like that I make exceptions for, and outlining maybe even how to approach asking permission for those exceptions and exemptions from that rule. Another one is, I talked about the events, talked about the group shoots. Events and shoots are two things that I want to make sure they understand forfeiting are not going to give them, additional options. We're not going to make that up. I also want to talk about the difference between an individual session and a group session and set expectations for the number of images they're going to get of themselves from those shoots. Because again, when you have a group session with 19 people, they're not going to get 100 photos of just themselves. They're going to probably get 10 photos of just themselves and then a bunch of group photos. But then in their individual session, they're going to get a bunch of individual photos. So those are a couple of the biggest things that come to my mind. And then also when a termination from the team is necessary. That's another thing that I want outlined in the contract. Like if you break these rules, if you do these things or don't do these things, you will be terminated from the team. And a big part of that for me that's been an issue is the way they represent themselves online. I'm very particular about the way my brand is represented. And if you're sharing things that are inappropriate, if you're cursing on social media, if you're bullying somebody on social media, that's not going to be tolerated. And I make sure that that's communicated in the contract as well. Those are the big ones, I think.
Big ones. Yeah, I could go deep into that. I'm not going to because I could go down a rabbit hole here, everyone. One thing I was thinking too is I remember, I think from the first time I did a spokesmodel team to the second time. And at that point, we had the base foundation of this contract in place. I know we've modified it and changed it up a little bit from, the past few years and things that have gone on. And something that you guys all probably know if you're listening to my podcast in particular is we think of contracts as living documents. So if something happens or if Hope experiences something and she's like, hey, this happened with my spokesmodel team, we need to change this in the contract, or can we have a comment on the side that if this, then that? Yes, we absolutely do that with TLP contracts. But one thing I remember is I kind of did an incentive approach to get a free individual session. So I wouldn't even do 10. I'm like, good God, Hope, good job that you did 10 individual ones of people at sessions. I think I maybe gave them 1 or 2. And the reason being is I wanted them to do XYZ in order for them to get their free individual session. And it was a mini session, right? And then if they wanted to upgrade, they could upgrade, which was another cash influx for my business and kind of a good thing, as a business owner to try and do. Yeah. But I felt like at the beginning, it was really hard to get them to stick by all of the things that were in my spokesmodel contract that I wanted them to do. Like, people are busy. I get it. And they're seniors. Like, they're going to forget about things. They're going to go do their extracurricular activities and hang out with their friends. Yeah. But unless they posted this many times and tagged my photography business this many times, and I needed them to post some of those individual photos because unlike the group rep team photos, that kind of showcases something different online where you're promoting your rep team, but I wanted to promote senior sessions. Once they did, 5 out of the 10 things that they were required of, then they got their mini session and we could book that on the calendar. So just a different nuanced way that you can go about it. But like you said, you have to have it in your contract. And then the one thing I will say with spokesmodel and senior rep teams that's difficult is enforcing your contract. So your contracts, no matter what type of contract that you have as a service provider, is only as good as your willingness to enforce it. And I felt like that was a little bit challenging. I don't know if you do, Hope, of enforcing things in your spokesmodel senior rep contract, because you don't want to make people super mad, but you're also like, I didn't take 100 of these other people who applied. So I do feel like I need to enforce it more. I don't think people probably have that same situation, right? Maybe if they're building a senior rep team, they might not have as many applicants, which makes them probably less likely to want to enforce things in their contract. But would you give any advice to people on how to best approach enforcing contracts in that respect, especially with spokesmodel teams?
Absolutely. So I have a lot of things I could say on this. You and I could both go down so many rabbit holes. We might need to do like a part 2. But no, the first thing I'll say is that I think that a lot of the nuanced things, or a lot of the things in the spokesmodel contract, are very nuanced and hard to almost make tangible. Specifically the social media requirement. That's a big one that a lot of photographers get hung up on. Is I asked them to post about me 3 times this month and they've only posted once. And my rebuttal to that is, okay, but are they doing other things that maybe you're not seeing? Are they talking about you at cheer practice with all of their friends? Are their parents sharing on Facebook and you're not seeing it because you're not friends with them on Facebook? Are there other things happening that are actually still making that spokesmodel get referrals for you and work really hard to grow your business? You're just not seeing it. It was very, very rare that I would actually approach someone for not fulfilling the social media side of the rep contract, because I really felt like there are other ways to be marketing that maybe I wasn't seeing. If there's somebody that's actually just being, like, this sounds so mean, but like a deadbeat spokesmodel, and they're not posting at all, and they're not sharing about you, and they're not doing anything that they're supposed to be doing, you will know. And that is very, very obvious compared to someone who's maybe only posting once instead of twice, or twice instead of 5 times. There's really a big discrepancy there. And I will say this too, I think a huge thing that you can do to offset that ever becoming an issue is to provide them with resources to make it as easy as possible for them to share. A lot of spokesmodels won't share because they don't know what to post or what the caption should say, or have an incentive to post, to your point. And so I think that making it as easy as possible for them is awesome. I actually have a guide I send my spokesmodels to that has like pre-written caption ideas and marketing inspiration for them and things like that. It's almost like a handbook for an employee, but for a senior rep, that I think really, really helps. Because I think that it just becomes really tricky because they might be doing things that you're not seeing, and then you could upset them by telling them that they're not doing enough. And I will say too, this is my last point on this, but in 2024, if I were to do a senior rep team right now, I don't think that I would do cash incentives as a baseline. In past senior rep teams, the cash incentive was the baseline. Like, for every referral, you get X amount of money back, point blank, period. I found that because the parents are typically the ones paying for the spokesmodel team, the seniors don't care as much about getting the money back because they didn't see that money leave. Like, they love having their own money, but they never saw the money leave. So they don't really care as much about getting it back. But to what you said, they do care about extra photos of themselves. They love an extra picture of themselves. So I will incentivize them with things like what you said. I'll give them extra mini sessions. You can bring your best friend for an extra 20 minutes. You can do this fun mini session for prom. Like, those types of things will be the incentive instead. And if somebody, if there's a month that nobody's posted at all, I'll do an extra incentive, like the first person to post, or the most creative post, or everybody who posts will be entered to win this extra shoot or these extra photos or a Starbucks gift card even. But I think that there's actually better ways to incentivize them than just money if you're somebody that's starting out that doesn't have like the extra funds. I just wanted to touch on that because you mentioned that as kind of your referral program. And I think you can get really creative with that side of things.
Yeah, you totally can. And you've been in it way longer than I have. So I did it a certain way at the very beginning. Don't ever take my word for it, you guys, on business education. Like, I know a little bit, but I don't know as much. To your point on, okay, these are like the line item listed things that are in the spokesmodel contract. I think what I want to wrap up here is make it easy for them to check that box. Instead of say you need to post 5 times on social media, do 1 time. per month.
Yep. 100%.
And hopefully they can abide by that and fulfill that obligation on their end. And then, like Hope said, kind of do incentives. If they over deliver, then they get this. And that's going to make it easier for them to, uphold their side of the contract as well. Okay, just a couple big open-ended questions here as we round out this episode. Thanks for coming on. What is your reason behind why you suggest photographers get legally legit? Why is it so important?
So I view small business owners and photographers like our businesses are our babies. We work so hard on these passions. We work so hard to build things that we are so proud of. And I think because of that, we are just so close to our work and emotionally invested in our work. And it is devastating when something happens that could intimidate that or take away from that. And so I think that it is so unbelievably important for you to know that you are protected and your clients are protected from anything that could possibly happen. Because it's one of those situations, which I'm sure has been said on the podcast so many times, where it's not too late until it's too late. Like once something terrible happens, if you have not already protected yourself, it's too late. It's one of those things that you're going to wish you had done once it's too late. So it would just be so much better to get it done now and never have to worry about it in the future.
Love that. Give me your most freaked out situation in the industry that you've heard of oh my gosh, what is going on? And why a contract would be so important in that situation. Usually I always ask people this and it has nothing to do with a situation they've encountered, but something that blew up on social media or blew up in a Facebook group, or maybe you were talking with a photographer friend that had some weird situation that came up too. I would love to hear your side of this.
Oh my gosh, I've heard so many. When you've been doing it for 11 years, you hear some bananas stories. Yeah. I feel like the biggest ones, if we're talking seniors, the biggest ones that I've experienced are moms that are helicopter moms about tiny, tiny, tiny little things in the world of editing. I vividly remember I had one senior show up and their dress wasn't ironed. They didn't take the time to iron or steam the dress. And the mom lost it on me that I wouldn't edit every single wrinkle out of every single photo of this dress that they did not iron. And I had it in my contract, the artistic control and, what I will and will not do and what it costs to have additional edits done and that type of thing. But this was, oh my gosh, this was so long ago, but she even left me nasty reviews places because I wouldn't take the step to edit. And that was back when I was charging $200. It wasn't like she was paying a ton of money and wanting these edits within this crazy price. So that's that's not a super crazy story, but just moms that I don't think are going to be nitpicky that end up being so nitpicky and being so grateful that that's covered in my contract so that I don't even have to worry about it.
Sepia gate in mom of senior. Is what that is. Yeah,
for real.
I think editing requests across the board for photographers is probably number one clause that you need to have laser beam focus on if we've learned anything over the past summer as well. But interesting that you've had that, and I didn't even think about that with a mom who wants that photo absolutely perfect. And you can't anticipate that until it happens. So it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. So just make sure you have that clause in your contract. What are some last tips that you have for people that are interested in senior photography or growing a spokesmodel and senior rep team? Any closing remarks that you may have?
So my biggest piece of advice when it comes to the senior world is I think in the senior niche, more than any other niche, the most important first step that you can take is to actually get integrated in the senior community where you live. And I know that is so much easier said than done because I have a lot of moms and people that are 30, 40, 50 plus years old and they're like, how in the heck do I get integrated into my community of seniors? But it's so important because with seniors specifically, they want what their friends have. They want what's cool. They want what's popular. And if you're not those things or appearing to be those things, it's really hard to connect with them. So go out to a fun football game and photograph the pep rally side or the student section of the bleachers and create a gallery and send it out so that they have fun photos of themselves throwing streamers at a fun football game. That's what I did to get the ball rolling. Find a senior that's a friend of a friend or a kid of a friend or a cousin. Find somebody that is around the age of being a senior and start photographing them and sharing that on social media just to start visually representing that you photograph seniors. It's just so important to show show and visibly be able to see that you work with seniors and get integrated into your community as fast as you possibly can.
Such good tips, everyone. I hope you're marking those all down in your brain. Hope, what is one really cool thing that you're working on right now in your business that's getting you fired up as a visionary and business owner?
Oh, I'm going to give you two. I am launching desktop presets this year, which is something people have been asking for forever. Yay! And I've been refining for forever. So that's happening later this year. And then I'm also considering doing some one-on-one coaching for the first time ever in my business for photographers instead of for visionaries and online business owners. So that's in the works too. So two big things, but I'm very excited about both of them.
Well, if people are interested in hearing more about those, where can they find you? Give everyone the details so that they can connect with you after they listen in.
Yeah, so Instagram is the most fun place because that's where I post most consistently. That's Hope Taylor Photography. If you're looking for more education on seniors, I actually have a YouTube channel where I share tons of content like what we talked about today. Yes, you do. And so there's tons of videos there.
It's a good YouTube channel, you guys. Go take a peek.
I am honored. But just search Hope Taylor. You'll find me there. Tons of tips and tricks for spokesmodel teams and things we talked about today.
Amazing. Hope, thank you for giving us your time. It was a true delight to chat with you and kind of go back in time, but also come back to 2024 together.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's show. Be sure to visit thelegalpage.com for contract templates, blogs, YouTube videos, and additional legal resources. If you haven't already, head over to iTunes and leave me a review and rating. It truly means so much to me to hear your feedback and inspires me to continue creating podcast content. Also, I want to personally invite you to my free Facebook group at tlpfacebook.com, where you will get access to me, my legal team, and thousands of other entrepreneurs in there for unlimited business and legal Q&A. Until next time, my friend.